Hello and welcome to this podcast on travel allowances. Today we're going to look at how to calculate the taxable portion of a travel allowance. So let's first look at the framework. So the first step is you need to go and actually calculate the travel allowance. Now this will be given to you as a few thousand rand per month. So you have to go and calculate it for the tax year. So you're going to multiply it with the applicable number of months that you receive this travel allowance during your tax year. The next step is to go and deduct from that the business use, and then we are left with the taxable portion of the travel allowance. The business use is calculated by taking the business kilometres and multiplying it with the greater of the deemed cost per kilometre or the actual cost per kilometre. In other words, there's three steps that you need to go and calculate. You need to go and calculate your business kilometres, you need to go and calculate your actual cost per kilometre, and you need to go and calculate your deemed cost per kilometre. It is, however, important to note that you can only deduct the business use if an accurate logbook was kept. After you've deducted your business use, as I said, then you are left with the taxable portion of your travel allowance. When you approach a question, I would also approach it in this format. Okay, so start with your travel allowance and then go and calculate three elements. So the first element, as I said, was your business kilometres. In your logbook, it will indicate what was the total number of kilometres. You would need to go and indicate what was private and then what was business. So remember always, total kilometres less your private kilometres equals your business kilometres, or the other way around. Your total kilometres minus your business kilometres equals your private kilometres. This is important because we're going to use it in the rest of the calculation as well as when we are actually going to calculate the business use, where we use the business kilometres. The next step is to go and calculate your actual cost per kilometre. Actual cost can include the actual cost of fuel, licensing, insurance fees, maintenance costs, wear and tear, and finance charges. Accurate records need to be kept of this actual cost, and if you did not, you cannot calculate this actual cost per kilometre. It's not the end of the world if you don't have accurate records, then you just don't go and calculate step 2, which is the actual cost per kilometre. Then you only use the deemed cost. So in other words, then your actual cost would be 0 if you didn't keep records. Important thing to note here is that the wear and tear is of a maximum of 560,000 Rand. So that means if your vehicle, for example, costs 700,000 Rand, your wear and tear is only 560 divided by 7, which is the period of the vehicle that we use to go and calculate the wear and tear allowance for every year. We add all of these costs together and then we divide it by the total number of kilometers to get to an actual cost per kilometer. Okay, so we need to go and do this to make it comparable to the deemed cost per kilometer, which we are going to go and calculate in step number 3. So step number 3 is we need to go and calculate the deemed cost per kilometer. Now for the deemed cost per kilometer, we only need to use the cost of the car. Remember always, the cost of the car includes VAT and excludes finance charges. So for the deemed cost per kilometer, you go and read from the deemed cost table. So we have three things. We have the fixed cost, the fuel cost, and the maintenance cost. Now the fixed cost is given in Rand for the full year of assessment for a period of 12 months. So we need to go and adjust this because your fuel cost and maintenance cost is given to you as cents per kilometer. So you have to go adjust the fixed cost to add it to the fuel and maintenance. You can't add the fixed cost to the fuel and maintenance cost because the fixed cost is for a full year and is for all travel for a period of 12 months. Let's go do an example. Stefan is required to travel for work purposes. He received a travel allowance of 2,000 Rand per month for the full year of assessment on his Suzuki Jimny, which he purchased for 220,000 Rand, excluding VAT. Remember, the cost of the car always includes VAT, excludes finance charges. He kept an accurate logbook of the distances travelled, and this logbook indicated that he travelled a total of 25,000 kilometres, of which 12,000 kilometres was for private purposes. Remember, you can only reduce the travel allowance with business use if you kept an accurate logbook. So luckily, he did. He also kept record of the actual expenses he incurred. You can only calculate the actual cost per kilometre if you kept record of your actual expenses incurred. In this case, he did. So we can go and calculate step number 2. He had maintenance costs, fuel costs, and licensing costs. Your framework is that you need to take your travel allowance and then from that you need to go and deduct your business use. So in the question they told us that Stefan earned 2,000 Rand per month for a full year of assessment. So you're going to multiply 2,000 with 12 to get to your travel allowance. Your next step is then to go and deduct your business use. Now your business use is the business kilometers multiplied with the greater of your deemed costs or your actual costs. Remember, if you don't have your actual costs, you only go and calculate your deemed costs. Our first step is to go and do step 1, which is our business kilometers, where we take our total number of kilometers, which I told us Stefan traveled a total of 25,000 kilometers. From that, we deduct the private kilometers to get to the business kilometers, and they told us private was 12,000, and then our business kilometers would be 13,000 kilometers. Our second step is to go and calculate the actual cost per kilometre. So for that, we can take the cost of maintenance, fuel, licensing, wear and tear, finance charges, etc., add them together to get to a total actual cost. But we want to get to the actual cost per kilometre. So they told us that the maintenance cost was 4,500 Rand, the fuel was 13,000 Rand, and the licensing fees was 500 Rand. The wear and tear, we need to take the cost of the car, including that, and we're going to go and divide it by 7 years. The actual cost per kilometre would now be the total cost divided by the total number of kilometres to get to the actual cost per kilometre. Why do we use the total number of kilometres? Because remember, these costs is for all travel, and therefore, to get to a cost per kilometre, you need to divide by the total kilometres that the person travelled. The next step is we need to go and calculate our deemed cost per kilometre, and therefore we need to go look at the deemed cost table. For that table, we need the cost of the vehicle, including VAT, to decide what the determined value is. Then you take this 250,800, you go look at the deemed cost table, and then you will see your first amount on the deemed cost table is your fixed cost. And the table tells us that our fixed cost is 87,223. Now remember, this 87,223 is not the same format that it is for the maintenance cost and the fuel cost, because the maintenance cost and the fuel cost is a cents per kilometre. This fixed cost is for the full year for all travel, and therefore we divide by the total number of kilometres to get to the fixed cost per kilometre. Then to that we can add the maintenance cost on the table as well as the fuel cost on the table. We add them all together, then we get to the total deemed cost, which is a deemed cost per kilometre, and you'll see it's given to you in cents. We compare the actual cost per kilometre with the deemed cost per kilometre, and then you will see, if you just quickly go back, the actual cost per kilometre was 215 cents, and the deemed cost per kilometre is 502 cents. So the greater of the two is obviously the deemed cost per kilometre. We take the travel allowance, and from that we deduct the greater of the deemed cost, or the actual cost, which we know now is the deemed cost, and we multiply it with business kilometers, and then you will see it gives us 65,884. The travel allowance can never be negative, because it's a cash amount that is given to you to travel for business. And if your business travel costs us more than your travel allowance, we can't tax you on anything, because none of the travel allowance was used for private purposes. And the whole purpose of this allowance is to tax you on the amount that was received for your own benefit, in other words, for private purposes. So in this case, your taxable allowance would be 0. I hope this podcast helps you with the calculation of your travel allowance. Bye-bye.